Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. Hi, my name is Kevin Wong and I'm the Director of the Desert Institute at Joshua Tree National Park, which is the educational program of the Joshua Tree National Park Association. With me today is Lara Roselle of the National Park Service, who originally proposed a series of webinars to train park staff on park-specific topics while they are working remotely during this pandemic. We will be your hosts and the producers of these webinars. Before I get started, I would like to offer some tips on how to use this webinar effectively. As internet bandwidth is heavily used in California due to the stay-at-home direction, and so many of us are working remotely, we may have issues with internet connections. If you have audio or monitor issues during this webinar, it may be due to having too many programs open, including email or Facebook, which have regular updates. These will reduce your access to bandwidth. In addition, when the webinar begins, you will see a small control panel on your screen. There is a question mark and a dialogue balloon. If you click on the question mark, you can ask questions that we will present to the speaker during her presentation. At this time, we will begin. Today's presentation is How to Identify Animal Burrows with Candice Weber. Candice, thank you for being here today.
Thank you both for putting this together. This is actually kind of fun to do this from home, more fun in person, but I appreciate the opportunity. And just so you know, please interrupt anytime to ask questions. I do not mind the interruptions. Okay, Burrows of Joshua Tree National Park, but burrows of basically the desert of Southern California. But the animals we'll talk about are found in Joshua Tree National Park. And what you're looking at here, this slide will come up later, this little photo of an old creosote bush and a bunch of little holes. And that we will talk about, it should belong to a kangaroo rat. Here we go. So as you walk around the desert, you know that there are so many holes and types of holes, sizes, declination, in all kinds of different substrates. But not everything is a hole in the ground. We have dens, we have pallets, carved out little caves, if you will. Some have nesting or bedding. Then there are other things that aren't really homes at all, that are cache sites. We'll get to that at the end of the lesson. And then instead of holes, you may notice fresh mounds of soil instead of holes. So we're going to talk about that as well. Okay, when you're trying to figure out who lives where, what kind of real estate you're walking over, first of all, I'm sure you already are aware, but something I always tell our students when we have to go out and look at things in the desert is to just be really careful where you walk, because it's little things like beetles, scorpions, spiders, the little engines, of the ecosystem all live underground out here in the desert, and we just have to be careful where we're stepping. So, who is found in an area? Can you identify every hole and go, okay, I know that the cactus mouse lives in that hole? It's really hard to identify exactly which animal is going to live in that hole, but you can narrow it down to a few possibilities. So things you need to consider, just like when you're bird watching or looking for reptiles, who lives here? Who's found in this area of Joshua Tree? And Joshua Tree's got several types of habitats. So you may have sand dune habitats, you may have rocky canyon habitats. So yeah, look at the substrate. Is it on a slope? Is it a steep canyon? Is it in the cholla garden area? Look at the plant life, the density of plants. Some animals like it sparse, some like it thicker. Is there a stream or some kind of a riparian presence nearby? Is it in the middle of a habitat, or is it on the edge between two habitats? So that will help you if you're going to if you're looking for specialist species who really like the core of a habitat, or generalists who can kind of make use of a variety of habitats. Look for tailings, like tailings, which would mean excavation. So if somebody's digging a burrow, what does the mound of dirt outside look like? Scrape marks, scat. The declination, meaning how steep is the tunnel? Does it go in at an angle like a tortoise burrow will go at like a slight angle and head downward, downward, downward. Does it drop straight down? Obviously, the size is the first thing you look at, the size and shape. You know, the size and shape is pretty similar to the animal that uses it. Oops, what was the rest of that? Yeah, is there a mound of soil around the hole? Okay. Who actually makes the burrows versus who borrows the burrows? That's also another thing to consider. If there's a tortoise burrow and you're like, wow, it's a tortoise burrow. I wonder if the tortoise is home. You don't stick your hand down the tortoise burrow because other things use that burrow too, like rattlesnakes. How do you find out who lives in an area? This is a photo taken at Zizek's Desert Study Center in the Mojave Desert. That child is my daughter, Annabelle, and she's helping us with these pit traps. So she's taking the lid off in the left picture. Over here is it's a bucket, and it's this area where they've got 150 buckets put in the ground that go along a gradient from a higher elevation down to a lower elevation in the sandy soil. And so one way to find out who lives there is to put in pit traps. And you take the lid off, and at nighttime, as animals are traveling through, they may fall in, and then you get out there first thing in the morning, check it out, see who fell in the pit. And that's a great way to get data. This is a really interesting graph. This is a graph that is, they were doing a study on marmots. And so no, we're not talking about marmots. But what this graph actually describes is temperature of a burrow. And so this may be marmot burrows, but it gives us an idea of why animals use burrows at all, anywhere, in any ecosystem. The red line is the temperature of the burrow. And it's higher in the summer months and cooler in the winter months, and then it goes back up. But it's fairly constant compared to the outside temperature. The green line is the amount of snow cover. So a lot of snow cover in the winter. And then the black line is the outside temperature, which gets really cold, and this is temperature in Celsius. So while it gets really cold outside, the burrow stays fairly regular, stays fairly constant, relatively constant. So, you know, as we all know, desert animals need burrows to escape from the summer heat, but also many of them escape from the winter cold here in our desert. And you don't have to go very far underground to see that there's a constant temperature. Even just a few inches underground can save an animal's life just from being exposed to the outside temperature. All right, I like to think of ecosystems in terms of the services they provide. So whether you're looking at abiotic factors, non-living factors, or the living factors, what kind of interesting things are services kind of doing? What kind of niches are helping out other niches? So something that burrows provide are a few things here. First of all, these first items here, oxygen levels are lower, carbon dioxide levels are higher. So how is that a service? This point here, these animals that live underground are called fossorial animals, and they're really quite unique genetically. So they actually kind of broaden the genetic scope of the wildlife kingdom. They tolerate conditions that most of us cannot tolerate. I mean, if you've ever stuck your head down in a tortoise burrow, you learn pretty quickly it's very dark, it's very tight, low oxygen. I couldn't tolerate it for 5 minutes. These guys like it that way. So it's an interesting genetic service. The other things is those who make burrows actually provide refuges for many others that can't make burrows but need them. So some of these burrow making species can be considered keystone species because of this burrow service they provide to many, many others. Burrows aerate the soil, they relocate soil, and in many cases, like especially with pocket gophers, they mix biomass. Harvester ants and pocket gophers actually will bring biomass from the surface, like seed husks and plant matter, down underground, which helps to get nutrients into the soil. So the next time your squirrel, your ground squirrel, is tearing up your garden, come back to this slide and think about, you know what, maybe that squirrel might be providing nutrient ecosystem services. This is a Florida gopher tortoise image, but they're very closely related to our desert tortoises here. But I liked the colorful image, so I went with that. But as you can see what we talked about, you've got the tortoise here, and it's a pretty simple. Tortoises don't dig extra little tunnels off to the side. Tortoises just dig straight down. Now, their burrows can go up to 30 feet. And you can see the declination here. It does go at a downward slant. Sometimes they have to turn a corner. If there's plant roots or rocks, they will turn a corner. It's not always just straight down. But look at all these other little guys that use the same burrow. We have insects, snakes, rodents who may build off to the side. So again, major ecosystem service right here. I would consider tortoises a keystone species. Just a picture of like simple. Some burrows are very, very simple. Some are much more complex. So this would be a pocket gopher, or actually prairie dog. Be prairie dog. So it's a whole like little village underneath. Whereas this here, this little mouse, pretty simple. We're looking at rodents. So now let's get into who lives in Joshua Tree, or which animals could be making these little holes in Joshua Tree. We're looking at our rodents, and we can break up our rodents into a couple of different families here. This is the Miridae family, where you've got little mice like cactus mice, canyon mice. Grasshopper mice are larger. We'll look at their slide next. And then wood rats are still larger. We'll look at their slide later. These two here, we've got a little cactus mouse and a canyon mouse. They live in kind of different habitats in the same desert. A cactus mice on top of the cactus. They're very good at climbing up and down plants in the desert scrub. Canyon mice like the rocky canyon hillsides. But if you want to, you know, if you're going outside and you're looking around and you see a hole that's maybe about 1 to 1.5 inches round, kind of goes down into the ground, it's probably a mouse. The size and shape of a mouse. They're very small, 1.5 inches for these smaller Miridae, cactus and canyon mice. They may have multiple entrances, very near often to vegetation. They also may borrow the older burrows of other animals. This is what makes it difficult to identify exactly who made the burrow. And tarantula burrows can be mistaken for mouse burrows too. Tarantula burrows are about the size of a quarter, about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches. And so for tarantula burrows, look for webbing. Sometimes they're hanging out right near the entrance of the burrow, whereas mice might be down inside. A grasshopper mouse is larger, about 1.5 to 2 inch size of a burrow. The grasshopper mice are the predators of the mice world. They will eat insects. Here, this one's eating a scorpion. Every now and then, if you're out walking around, you may notice a darkling beetle, those big, black, thick beetles with its abdomen sticking up in the air and no head. Sometimes you'll see like a beetle with no head and it's just been like kind of stuck in the ground. Or it's the other way around with the abdomen stuck down in the ground and the head is missing. That's grasshopper mouse, probably predating on the beetles. And they'll actually predate on other mice, on these mice. These are the grasshopper mice are the ones known for standing on their hind legs and, you know, letting out a loud squeal. Their shafts are nearly vertical with a right angle turn down inside, but they're going to be bigger than the other mice. So you want to look for about a 1.5 to 2 inch wide hole This is your desert wood rat, also in the family Miridae. They're larger. They've got these big round ears. They don't necessarily dig down in the ground. Like their burrow entrances are not holes in the ground. Their burrows are very messy, piles of debris. Here is that one picture. The best way to find these, honestly, is to just climb around in the kind of the rocky outcroppings, those large rock piles. Black Rock Campground has got lots of that. And you will see piles of debris tucked into the rocks. And the telltale sign is scat. Little desert wood rats scat and urine all around with this debris kind of stuck into the rocks. They love living in those rocky hillside outcroppings. The Heteromyidae are a different family. These would be the pocket mice down here. And then up here is our kangaroo rats. There are lots of species of kangaroo rats, but the most common one in Joshua Tree is the Miriams Kangaroo Rat, which we'll look at a slide in just a minute. They're in a different family because they have these cheek pockets. You can see this one's got lots of food stuck inside its fur-lined cheek pocket. The other rodents in the Miridae don't have that. So, Miriam's kangaroo rat. Here's another picture. These guys are different. They live solitary lives, the kangaroo rats, and they'll have the mounds that are really, really associated with a bush. So you'll have like this fresh mounding under a bush with multiple entrances, and it's all for one little kangaroo rat. Really do like creosote and mesquite. Kind of open areas. Again, Black Rock Campground is a great place to see kangaroo rat homes. This is taken out at, again, Zizek's Desert Study Center, this sandy one here. But I like the sand because this is the other thing to look for, are these tail drags. Kangaroo rats have long tails. They stand up on their hind feet. See if you can see that picture. They have big, big back feet. And when they hop around, this tail drags around. So they leave these telltale tail mark, telltale signs. And also, kangaroo rats have these two back feet marks when they hop. So again, that first picture, a kangaroo rat will have, what you look for is kind of like this, sometimes it can look old if it's been there for a year, a couple years, but they have this distinctive mounding under a nearby bush, because the bush has a root structure that stabilizes the soil. So it's a kind of this distinctive mounding. And then these entrances inside that mound. It looks like somebody just dumped a pile of debris, or they were digging a hole and left a pile here. That's kangaroo rat. Pocket gopher. These guys are really fun. Great place to see a lot of pocket gopher activity is Morongo Canyon Preserve. Multiple mounds, tunnels, 90 to 200 feet long, really extensive, kind of like prairie dogs. They're kind of our prairie dogs of the desert Southwest. If there's less food above ground, they really do come above ground and they grab all this fresh greenery and then bring it down underground. So the more food up above, the more mounds you're going to see. And they are solitary. So all that activity is for one pocket gopher. So because they're, you know, a hot menu item, they have to build these extensive mounds, burrowing networks underneath so they can get away if something finds them. This I just took last week. This was up in Pinion, so across the valley, other side, but all this fresh dirt. This is fresh dirt. If you could just scrape away this dirt, you might see the entrance down into the burrow. So they'll excavate underneath and then push it up above, and then you won't see the entrance. Unlike the kangaroo rat, who also has this mounding effect, but the kangaroo rat will dig its tunnel right into that mound, whereas a pocket gopher, all you'll see are these fresh mounds. Gopher mound. So here you go. Here's the gopher mound. If you could just scrape away that dirt, you might see the tunnel going down. Here's another one. Here you can actually see the tunnel. And another picture. These guys are prolific. They are all over the place in the Joshua Tree area. Black Rock, again, great place to find them. They live solitary. The white-tailed antelope ground squirrel. They look like chipmunks, but they're not chipmunks. They are lacking that white facial stripe right here. Their mounds, or I'm sorry, excuse me, their burrows can be mistaken for kangaroo rat burrows, and they do kind of live in the same area. How do you tell the difference? Because they're a little bit bigger than they're actually, yeah, they're bigger, maybe twice the size of a kangaroo rat. So their holes are going to be a little bigger. But really the way to look at it is they're going to dig right into the substrate. There's no mound of soil. There is just a network of holes dug straight into the dirt. And that's one way to tell the difference. And kangaroo rat has a mound built up under a bush, whereas the antelope ground squirrel, the holes will go straight into the dirt. 1.5 to 2.5 inches, bigger than a mouse, but they're not. They're the size of like a wood rat. All right, round-tailed ground squirrel. These guys live together. They're in social colonies, multiple escape routes. These guys are larger, a little larger maybe than the same size, a little larger than the antelope ground squirrel. These guys are in a more arid regions in Joshua Tree, and they're not active year-round. So I don't know that they're going to be up at Black Rock Campground, but they're going to be maybe down towards the Sonoran Desert region of the park. It's a little warmer and drier. And the California ground squirrel, these guys are much larger than the other squirrels. And they're often associated with people and people infrastructure, like sidewalks and foundations and gardens. They're generalists, they're opportunists. These guys will make use of just about anywhere to make a home, so they often can outnumber the other squirrels. Live in colonies. Their holes are large. Took this picture last week. This is a little trowel for size, to see the size reference. Brown squirrel. So the best place to find these guys, again, are like near human structures. Cottontails. These guys don't dig burrows. So now we're going to get into some other guys that maybe don't dig deep burrows. But they need kind of some cover. They like cover. So they're going to build what we call a form instead of a burrow. So it's a hollow under grasses or bushes where they can kind of move around with some cover, or a depression. So they like thicker habitat rather than sparser habitat. Here's a form, a little entrance right over to the left side of the page. They'll make use of little dens and things inside of rocks. So here's a question. We haven't talked about this one yet, so that narrows it down. This is a very large entrance. I would say 6 inches to 8 inches. Around. The tailings are right here. Lots of tailings. Here's another view of a different one, different tunnel. See the scrape marks along the side? Can you guess? Oh, sorry, here's another picture. Here's some more scrape marks. This is some seriously long set of tailings right here. There we go. The badger. Badgers are very prolific diggers. They dig every day, perhaps a new burrow every day. They move around quite a bit. Look at those claws. They're digging to find their food. They're digging to find shelter. I know we've seen them at Black Rock, seen the badger in the burrow as well as just the burrow. So they are definitely here in the desert. They've been spotted near desert hot springs. They're in Morongo Canyon. So they're found in a lot of places. But if you look at a badger, I mean, they're going to have pretty large burrow sizes to fit that body, maybe 6 inches to 8 inches. Sometimes it's shaped. I'll go back, show you. This looks more, that looks like a tortoise burrow right there, the half moon. So it could have been a tortoise burrow taken over by a badger or vice versa. But badger burrows tend to be more circular. Go back and look at this one. They tend to be circular. This one's more of an up and down circle, oval, than this one, which is more of a side to side oval. But badger burrows tend to be circular. So this one says that a hole is 12 inches wide by 7 inches high. That's pretty large, pretty large. I would go with 10 to 8 inches, depending on how big the badger is. Many holes in an area, big diggers. They like the flatter, softer, gravelly soil, alluvial fan type soil. Look for scrape marks, lots of tailings, often fresh tailings. Spotted skunk. These guys, kind of like rabbits, like thicker, brushier places. They're not necessarily known for digging burrows like a badger, but they will scrape out places, kind of make it a little bit more homey for them. They may scrape places out, but they're not going to be like badgers digging those burrows every day. They're more like rabbits using a form or some kind of a hollow. And they really like riparian areas, areas where you're going to find water. So I'll go back. Here is another burrow. Looks like a badger burrow, but it's not. 7 to 8 inches oval, usually in flat, open areas, similar to a badger. Sometimes a shaft is vertical. I don't think I've ever seen a vertical badger shaft. Badgers tend to kind of go in at an angle, at a slant. So the desert kit fox. They like sand dunes, creosote scrub, open areas. They may have multiple entrances. This one here, you can see it's popping up out of its burrow. It tends to be more of a vertical type of a shaft. Here's some other pictures of different habitats. This is more of a sandy habitat. This kind of goes in at a slant, multiple burrows. This one here. The tailings aren't as dramatic as a badger burrow. Their paws they don't have the claws like the badgers do. And they're going to use their burrows for multiple days or weeks, rather than a badger who may move around quite a bit and use a different burrow every day. So which is why you don't notice the tailings as much. Gray foxes. They may dig a burrow, but they're not like kit foxes. They are a little bit more, they're more of a generalist. So whereas a kit fox likes that dry, open habitat, a gray fox is going to be found in a variety of different habitats. So they don't always need to dig a burrow. They may use rocks, little caves, sometimes known for climbing trees or using hollowed out trees. So they'll use whatever they can find, kind of like a coyote. Found in canyons, up in the juniper areas. They like more vegetation and cover than a kit fox. How do you tell the difference if you were to see them in the wild? Gray foxes have multiple colors. They've got gray and they've got red and this dark bushy tail, whereas a kit fox is more monotone, monocolor, tan, smaller face, and that's kind of the white neck. The tail is a lot lighter too, and a dark little tiny black tip on the tail. So kit foxes look more sandy colored, and they're found more in the sandy regions than a gray fox. Gray fox tails are all dark. Let's see here. Who made this? Coyotes. Coyotes can be found in burrows if they have nowhere else to find a home, or they may use hollowed out areas or little rocky caverns, but these are little coyotes, a coyote den. The dens are for raising the pups, or if they have to dig a burrow. But they don't really prefer to use a burrow. They prefer to use something like this that's already kind of carved out for them. Okay. They are difficult to locate. Bank sides, hillsides, slopes with drainage. So unlike a kit fox that might be out in the open, these guys that might be up against something. And look for scat. They do leave scat out in the open. Coyotes do, right in the middle of a pathway. And look for food scraps. But again, knowing kind of where they may prefer their den will help you in figuring out, oh, well, is that a kit fox, gray fox, or a coyote den? So the difference between a coyote and a gray fox is size. Coyotes are a lot bigger than gray foxes. Okay, on our iconic desert species, who do you think made this? Or that? Or left that behind? These guys are my own personal tortoises. But that, of course, is who made those other dens. So a tortoise will use, if they're female tortoises, often they will share a den. So you may find more than one female tortoise in a den. So if we go back, this is more of a den than a burrow. This would be like a daytime resting spot. They'll come out in the morning when the cool temperatures, look around for food. And then as the sun comes up, they don't maybe want to go all the way back to their burrow. So they'll hang out in a pallet. We call it a tortoise pallet. They may scrape it out of under a rock or under a tree somewhere. And the telltale sign is the scat and the shape, but they often leave scat behind. And then at nighttime, they'll come out of this and then head back to their burrows. Let's see here. That is another tortoise burrow. I think that was found out at Black Rock campground. Again, it's a simple one for the tortoise. They go in, they like it nice and snug inside that burrow. We built a tortoise den box for our tortoises to give them an option. They have a burrow that they created. We built a den box, put the box in the ground with a nice little entrance. They don't like it at all. It's too roomy in there. I mean, I could survive in there. They don't like it. They like it nice, and I guess they feel secure. We already said that they can dig extensive burrows up to 30 feet in length. More than one tortoise can use it, and they use it year after year after year. They are very territorial. This one research study found up to 25 tortoises in a den. Another study, the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum, says that in northern Utah, some dens have been dated at 5,000 years old. There are estimates saying that the tortoises have been around for 60 million years. So they are an ancient species. This is another animal resting place right in here that a tortoise could use during the day, or a rabbit. Or a black-tailed hare. These guys, again, not burrow diggers. They live like the cottontails under vegetation, tracks, under large bushes. You'll notice little animal freeways or pathways through the vegetation or under the vegetation, all used by cottontails. The hares maybe out in the open a little more. They like more sparse habitat compared to the cottontails. And back to our desert wood rat. These guys have what they call the Motel 6 of the desert. Because other species may use their burrows or their dens as well. Lots of debris, can be very large and messy. Often it's glued together with urine. Multiple entrances, and it's just one rat per midden. So we call, instead of a burrow, we call their homes middens. And middens are debris piles. And you may have seen these. They often use cactus as a defense. They'll find other objects. This is in the Cholla garden over in Joshua Tree. They may bring in man-made artifacts like pens, pencils, all kinds of things, bottle caps. This is what you'll see if you're looking in the rocks. Just a debris pile, urine, scat. This was taken in Morongo Preserve. This is a very large midden off the left side of the boardwalk as you're entering the trail. This one's been around for quite a while. This is a picture of Pleistocene era pack rat midden. This goes back thousands of years, but they can age date. They can do some carbon dating and figure out about how far back this midden goes. This is all urine markings left on the rock wall. So that's another service that burrows provide. We can look at information like seeds that are in the burrows that were from thousands of years ago. Figure out what plants lived here, what the climate was like by looking at soil. This is another thing. So here are some of the things other than burrows. We've got, this is an old log. And this debris on the log is pack rat. It's pack rat debris, pack rat scat, old scat. So the pack rat was living inside this log and left all this scat, and the log eventually disintegrated. So this has been here many years. This is over in Black Rock Campground. Let's see, what are we looking at here? Another burrow. Who lives there? Sometimes these burrows are places where animals are simply just looking for food. But how can we tell who lives here? We've got some footprints over here, some tail drags over here. This could be kangaroo rat. This is a cache site. So they're often like these little rectangular shapes, but somebody hid some seeds here and then came back later and found the seeds. Here's your tailings. And this is my very last slide. So don't forget that these guys, lizards, don't tend to dig burrows. Snakes don't tend to create burrows, but they use everybody else's burrows. Some lizards may dig burrows, but a lot of them will borrow burrows from the other guys. So we have to be careful when we're out there and tread lightly. That is the end. I can give you my email address if you guys have any questions, or I can send out some of these photos. That's all I have. So if anybody has any questions, I'd love to hear them.
Hey, Candice, I have a question. So is there a difference between a pack rat and a wood rat? And if so, what is that difference?
No, it's the same thing. So pack rat's sort of the fun common name. Wood rat is a common name, but we also call them pack rats because of the behavior of collecting anything they can find to protect their entrances, their middens.
So the ones that I knew when I lived in Utah, for instance, at a much higher elevation, that's the same species that's running around here?
They're a different species, but they're all collectively called pack rats. They're same genus, wood rat genus, but they're a different species depending on your elevation.
Aha, okay.
And plant life. So the ones in higher elevation, Utah, would be different than the desert pack rats the desert wood rats that are down here.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
I'm not seeing any other questions, but sometimes they take a little bit to come through on our program, so we should give it a little more time.
No problem.
I think you verified that the burrow we recently found near our house is in fact kit fox based on the size and the rectangular look to what I think of as the main entrance. And yeah, I'm excited to go up there and start watching and find.
Yeah, put a wildlife camera out there. That might be kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it on your property or just outside your property?
No, it's halfway up Campbell Hill, I would say.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'd love to see a picture of it if you are able to get a picture of it sometime.
Yeah, there's a lot of OHV activity, but you know, they apparently have been there, so we'll try and see what we can find.
Yeah. It's fine if they stay on the trails, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's exciting, yeah, to see them out there. I know there's a lot of studies going on trying to track them. They're down at Dos Palmas, down by the Salton Sea.
Yes, we will put it on iNaturalist after we verify that they're there.
Cool.
Well, I don't see any other questions. So, Candice, thank you so much for being here today with us. And thank you to our audience. Next week's webinars will be with Jim Cornett. He's speaking on the Roadrunner. And Sean Milanovich will be speaking on Jim Pine, a Serrano Kika, and his neighbors at the Oasis of Mara. Until then, please stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.